parents as paid caregivers and rules around it. On our website, I believe it does identify what those rules are, but generally, parents may be paid paid service providers. So we don't like to use the term caregivers. I just looked right at Claire and I know I said the wrong word. Service providers. So we don't have a medical model, and that's why it's important that it's not caregivers. The whole goal of developmental disabilities is to help people gain independence, use the skills they have, and be as independent as they can possibly be through the provision of services to support their independence. And parents who have the ability to help their adult child with gaining independence and providing services for them to do that may be direct support professionals for their adult child with disabilities. They can do it for 40 hours a week. They can't access overtime. They can do it for 40 hours a week. If you have two parents, their combined amount of time providing service support is 40 hours. Not 80 hours, 40 hours. There is an exception request that can be made for very few people for exceptions. But if it's two parents, you can split it 0-40, 10-30, 25-15, 20-20, however you want to do it, but 40 hours per household. So before I move on from that, are there any questions? So what Mary Beth just said, and I'm going to repeat it so that it gets on the video, is that on the Disability Rights Rhode Island website, it includes all the family members in the household for that 40 hours. But I'm going to get back to you, and then we'll put out information, and then we'll reach out to Disability Rights Rhode Island, who is a great partner as well, and verify that the 40 hours applies to parents, not to other members of the household. So we'll verify that, and then we'll put out information on our website so that will be clarified for us, for Disability Rights Rhode Island, and we'll all get on the same page.
I don't believe that parents are allowed to be paid as professional staff, such as nurses, right now. Is there any push to make that a possibility, or is that such a small population that it's not worth?
I would suggest we would not push for that because of the nature of it being professional and the conflict that would go along with providing nursing care for a relative. So I would suggest no. So the question was, since there's still a shortage of direct support professionals, is the state doing anything to train or build up the workforce? And so the answer to that is yes. There is a statewide workforce initiative that was promoted by the federal court in Rhode Island that's overseeing the consent decree. We began working on that well over a year ago. It has actually been very effective in stabilizing and building the workforce. So we've made progress. I don't have the numbers with me tonight, but we could get that information out. But what it focuses on is working to professionalize the workforce so that not only do we add numbers to the workforce, but reduce turnover so that we have a more stable workforce and a workforce focused on building a career in the field of providing services to people with disabilities. It also works on training supervisors so they have a better way and a more effective way of managing the DSP workforce to make them want to actually grow in the field. And so by having less turnover, I think the turnover when we started this project was something like 50% a year, half the staff were turning over, to reduce the amount of people who leave the field, grow in the field, want to become supervisors themselves, and stabilize the field so that we have a larger workforce, more stable workforce to provide services to people with disabilities. So we are working on that, and it's been very effective.
Does that include specialists like OTPT, speech language?
No, it's DSP workforce. So Claire asked me to talk about parents as DSPs and how we're working with parents to, I think what you mean is provide the same services that any DSP would provide. So we are working on developing training and guidelines for parents who become DSPs to have to provide the same documentation for Medicaid in for Medicaid that anybody would provide. And so that's true. So if you're a parent and working as a direct support professional, you're receiving Medicaid money to fund the program that you're working on with your adult with disabilities. And to do that, you still, like anybody who's a DSP, need to focus on the goals in the ISP to ensure that your adult child with disabilities is working toward their goals. And that's what you're being funded to provide. The funding isn't to just sit at home. The funding is to ensure that the goals that are being developed in the ISP are the goals that you're working on to help your child achieve whatever the goals are. Accessing the community, accessing work, whatever their goals are, that's what you're working on, and that's what you're attesting to, and that's what you're documenting. So yes, we're working on getting training up so that parents who want to do this and do it are doing it effectively to meet the goals of their adult child. So thank you. Yes, so.
Kevin, is there, there's a small number of parents who have a family member that have really intense kinds of needs, and I know some families have tried to recruit people. It might be a person has really significant health issues, or it might be an individual who has a need for a staff that can understand sign language or communicate with them, and those families can struggle to try to find the right staff. So is there an appeal process for the family member if the husband and wife want to both work more than the 40 hours, because if they could demonstrate that they've tried to reach out to get those staff and can't find those people?
So Claire asked, is there an appeal process if someone needs to work more than the 40 hours because of significant needs, either in communication health or something else? I'm gonna steer away from the legal language of appeal process. There's an exceptions form that someone can fill out, because an exceptions form is a lot easier than an appeal. You don't have to get a lawyer. You don't have to go to court. You have to demonstrate to us through the exceptions form why you need to do that. And it gets back to what the issue is. And I want to tell you issues. You have to tell us what the issue is. We'll work with you on it. Here's the thing. We don't want you to not have the service provision that you need. We want you to. We're not looking to deny people services that you need. We're not looking to make it harder for you. We're not looking to save our budget. So I hear a lot of rumors, so I'm going to just share that with you. They're just trying to save money in their budget. They cut our tier because they want to save money in our budget. We don't want to save money in our budget. Our CFO had said to me one time, "Oh, you're such and such over budget." I'm like, "Oh, I guess we didn't estimate correctly." That is not my concern. I am never worried about that. My concern is that if you have a disability, or your family member who has a disability gets the services and supports they need to be successful in the community. That's the only thing I worry about. So if we need to make an exception, we're happy to make an exception. But if we're not, we're going to say no. Yes, and that's so that other people can get it when they need it. Yes. Do you need to have Medicaid in order to get BHDDH services? Effectively, yes. You need to have Medicaid. That's a requirement for funding unless you wanted to privately fund your services, which you could do.